Rockstars, I'm Eric Voss, and the MCU mutants have arrived, with Kamala Khan established as the first mutant that we know about in the 616 MCU in the Ms. Marvel finale.
Kamala, there's something different in your genes, like a mutation.
Whatever it is, it's just gonna be another label.
Yeah, just a label. Good luck with that, kid. You got the 90s X-Men animated theme needle drop stamp of approval. Beyond the matter of this being a retcon from Kamala Khan being an Inhuman in the comics, this finally shows to us Marvel Studios' hand when it comes to their long-planned mutant rollout in the MCU. So what does Kamala being a mutant mean for future Marvel introductions in the MCU? If Kamala can have a mutant gene, who else does? How does this all work? Also, how does Bruno know all this? Like, is there a section on the Caltech application requiring genetic profiles of your crushes? But I needed to know for science. And this video was sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. We'll give you some more information on them in a moment. Bringing in the mutants is something Marvel Studios has been able to do since Disney acquired the film rights to the X-Men from Fox in 2018 and Kevin Feige's TZ announcement back at Comic-Con 2019.
There's no time left to talk about mutants and how mutants.
And notice how Feige said mutants there, not X-Men, meaning that they always planned for something more organic for the genesis of mutants in this universe, as opposed to a major multiversal crossover of major stars from the X-Men Fox franchise. It's not going to be so much about people who are aligned with the X-Men, but rather the personal stories of people who just happen to have that genetic profile. So Kamala Khan actually makes the third mutant tease in Marvel Phase 4 after the Evan Peters fake out as Pietro, aka Ralph Boner in WandaVision, and Patrick Stewart Charles Xavier cameo in Multiverse of Madness, but really only the second to receive the 90s X-Men riffs, so they're the only ones that matter. Though I have theorized that Ralph could return in Wonder Man, so don't count him out. Charles Xavier's cameo represented one mutant path that we've long theorized: multiversal crossover. In this plan, beloved actors who we already know who played mutants in the past X-Men titles could just join the MCU via some incursion. Like when Reed Richards babbled on about incursions and Multiverse of Madness as a whole seemed to be setting up the Avengers Secret Wars crossover event, it seemed at least possible that known X-Men stars from Universe 838 and beyond could be established as the X-Men in the 616 universe alongside the other Avengers. Of course, Multiverse of Madness proved that those cameos are really just added to the movie as fanservice lives to the cosmic slaughter! And now Kamala Khan's mutant designation implies a different path that we've talked about, a more grassroots genetic approach, that the MCU could just establish that the mutant gene already exists in a number of individuals throughout the 616 universe, but was simply dormant until now, or just unseen in the storylines we focused on until this point. And in this path, the famous mutant characters we know would likely be recast as MCU variants, which we have endlessly fan cast on this channel. Now, if you've watched our videos before, you probably already know how much we love Raid. It's got global PvP, massive PvE, boss battles, and over 600 champions that you can choose from. But today, we're gonna talk about one of those badass bosses you in both paths, because Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool is confirmed to join the MCU, playing the same version of himself, we think, from his 2016 film and 2018 film, which were more linked to the Fox X-Men continuity. And that would suggest that he's going to join the MCU as a result of some kind of incursion event, like what Reed warned about, or maybe in Secret Wars or on the other side of Secret Wars. Welcome back to New Rockstars. Are really more fixed, egocentric souls in which all of their variants look the same, whereas characters like Loki are, by their nature, agents of chaos who shapeshift and take alternate forms, thus Loki's variants looking like Tom Hiddleston in some instances, but also like other actors and other animals. Characters like Peter Parker are different actors because the early 2000s comics established multiversal Spider-Man as really a diverse spectrum of variants, that the whole journey of Peter Parker is to meet Spider-Man who look nothing like him. But getting back to Kamala Khan being a mutant, Marvel now firmly plants a flag in the option to activate mutants genetically within their population, setting up a kind of guessing game for fans in which, like with the Skrulls, any enhanced individual we meet or already know may have their powers as a result of a genetic precondition called the mutant gene, or the X gene. Ms. Marvel's head writer confirmed that making Kamala a mutant wasn't always the plan, but they introduced it as a way to explain why only Kamala, not anyone in her family descending from the Noor dimension, only Kamala would get powers when putting on that bangle. They needed to make make her specifically different in some way. And you can read about how this decision led to a humorous email exchange between Iman Vellani and Kevin Feige. Now, we're still left a little fuzzy on why Kamala needs to be a mutant, however. Like in avoiding the Inhuman Terrigenesis backstory, the Disney Plus series tried to explain Kamala's powers with 3 fantastical sources: hard light from the Nor Dimension, alien technology of the Bengal, and now Kamala's unique mutant gene. Remember, in the Marvel comics, the mutant gene is something all mutants are born with and activates at a young age, most of the time through puberty or through trauma, in some cases, weird experimentation or energy exposure. But in the MCU, so far, organic mutants require 3 components: a mutant gene, a source unique to that person's personal history, and a situational trigger. So if we use Kamala as a rule here, think of her mutant gene as a lock mechanism. Her ancestral Nor dimension was the source on the other side of that locked door, and the trigger key for her was the bangle. To compare this to another mutant, Cyclops, Scott Summers, the lock mechanism was his mutant gene, the key was puberty, and the source of his awesome ruby-colored optic blasts is actually a dimension of pure energy to which Scott's eyes open small interdimensional portals. If you didn't know that about Cyclops, that is actually how Cyclops fires those. Now, how does this work for Wanda Maximoff? In the comics, she is known to be a mutant, not sure yet in the MCU, but she has been called Enhanced, and going by the DODC and Ms. Marvel calling characters Enhanced who ended up being mutants, it is possible, and I'd even say likely, that the MCU will go in that direction for Wanda and for her kids, Billy and Tommy, who end up becoming the mutants Wiccan and Speed in the comics. I think Wanda's trigger was the trauma of that Stark warhead, because she was first able then to actively cast low-level hexes to keep it from exploding. The source, I think, was Chthon's dark magic, his curse. That, I think, is what ordained Wanda to become the Scarlet Witch. And of course, her mutant gene was the lock mechanism that made this all connect. Now, Wanda also had an additional trigger of a boost of Infinity Stone radiation from Hydra, and that's what I think elevated her to the Nexus being status, because it was in that moment that she saw her future. This might also explain why 838 Billy and Tommy don't have powers, because they have the genetic profile and the source, but not yet a trigger. They haven't really yet come of age or been fully traumatized. They almost did, and maybe they did in that moment. The 616 Scarlet Witch scared the hell out of them, and maybe that's something for the future of these kids, but we didn't see them yet in this moment have those powers. But if we compare them to Billy and Tommy within the Hex in WandaVision, those were manifestations of Wanda, empowered by the same trigger of Wanda's own trauma and her grief. So really, this is just my best explanation of how mutant kind will work in the MCU, but I'm gonna throw it to you. What do you think of this idea of 3 components being necessary? Is it too confusing? And if anybody from Marvel Studios is watching and just wants to claim that as their idea, go for it. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EAVoss. Follow New Rockstars, subscribe to New Rockstars for more analysis of everything you love. Thanks for watching. Bye.